Well, I'm Kirk Underschulz. I've been shoeing horses about 30 years now. I'm a certified journeyman farrier with the American Farriers Association. AFA number is 471. And I'm also very pleased to be able to say that I've been chosen to be one of the farriers at the World Equestrian Games this fall, 2010, at the Lexington, Kentucky Horse Park. So that's a real honor to be able to represent the United States and my chosen profession to the world as farriers. I'm here today to talk about these Happy Hoofwear shoes. They are polyurethane shoe. My interest in polyurethane, or actually in just synthetic shoes in general, started about 30 years ago. I was driving horses, primarily pavement, gravel roads, and I wanted some shoes that would maintain the soundness of my horse for years and years and years. I think that my search has stopped here with the Happy Hoofwear shoes. I'm playing with this as I speak. I can't help myself, I just do. They move, they bend, and they absorb a tremendous amount of concussion as they strike the ground. Because they're so flexible, and you can see the torque that's in there, I think a lot of what's happening is as the hoof expands and contracts over top of this shoe, the nails that on a steel shoe will brace the heels and keep the heels inward are actually pivoting within that shoe. There's so much flexibility within the shoe itself. And yet at the same time, I get a lot of questions, and here's a sample. A lot of people ask me, well, do the nails pull through? And no, they don't. There's a shoe that's been pulled, and on these nails you can see where all the clinches have actually straightened up, and yet there's the nail still in the shoe. I've been using these shoes for about 2 years now and have not had any of them pull the nails through the shoe. It is an issue with some of the synthetic shoes. Traction is an issue with a lot of the synthetic shoes. The Happy Hoofwear shoes give very good traction in snow and ice, wet mud, pavement, on cobblestone streets, wet or dry. Amish are using them a lot for their buggy horses. We're starting to have a lot of the police horses using these shoes. One of the comments I get from my owners is that this shoe you can easily pick out. There's 5 little spots have been added into this shoe that you put your hoof pick in, and it's leverage. Pops the dirt out very easily. To me as a farrier, I don't think of stuff like that. To my owners, it's important. I hear a lot of comments from them. The other comment that surprised me initially is when I go back and talk to my owners, they say, my gosh, my horses love these shoes. They don't say that I love the shoe nearly so much as the horses really like the shoes. They're moving better. They're taking a little longer stride. They're picking their legs up a little higher. You can feel a little more motion under the saddle. And again, it's because so much of that impact is absorbed here into the foot that you're freeing up the joints, the tendons, the ligaments. They're not doing the work. Another question I get a lot of farriers in particular asking, can you glue these shoes on? Well, yes you can. Here's a shoe that's been glued on, and obviously it's no longer attached. You can see where the glue, including a little bit of hair, has let loose of the foot before it's let loose of the shoe. So gluing is a good way to go on these Happy Hoofwear shoes as well. Lots of folks want to know, can you put studs in? Yes, you can. These are a screw-in stud. There's the base on the hoof side. I started out being concerned with traction and using studs on some of my horses. After some practical experience, I don't think these are necessary. They might be good from an owner's point of view, but as far as the horses, the traction on these shoes is so good you just don't need them. That's pretty much an overview on the Happy Hoofwear shoes. They come in a variety of colors, including black and clear, so a lot of owners like them. If they got purple leg wraps, purple lead shank, by golly, they want purple shoes too, so we can handle that. Let's get a horse, and I'll show you how to pull them off, how to trim a foot, how to nail them on. Pretty simple, easy operation. The gentleman holding the horse is Jim Dines. Him and his wife Becky, and his boss Becky, own Rusty Horse Stables. They board, they train, they do lessons. And more importantly than Jim is this mare. This is Grace. She's one of their school horses. She's one of the better school horses. You can trust her with little kids. She doesn't take advantage, and when you push the right button, this mare does what she's supposed to do. That makes her a valuable horse. She's also got navicular. And before I started using these Happy Hoofwear shoes, I got notes so I had my dates accurate. I looked up all my shoeing records. We put them on her April 13th of '09. That was the first time that we put shoes on her. As very commonly happens, with the initial shoeing, the hoof wall thickens, the heels open up, and you can't reset that shoe 6 weeks later. The foot is so much larger, you need to go to a larger shoe size. So June 11th of '09, I put new front shoes on her a second time. This is June 16th of 2010. So we're basically a year. She's used these same shoes that whole year, and they're worn out. Today she'll get new shoes on. I'll show you a worn set of shoes here as we pull them off. But the important part of it is she went from being quite sore, being used once or twice a week, and that was a maximum. And I think, Jim, you had her on Butte a lot of the time as well, didn't you?
Yes, we did.
To, by the third shoeing, she's packing kids regularly. She's comfortable. I got here that day, and Becky says, "You need to watch this horse move." And moving her here on the concrete, she is a huge improvement. And I hear this so very, very often from client after client after client. Their horses are happy with these shoes on. They're moving better. Now, often we see an improvement immediately. The very next ride, these owners are telling me they can feel their horses reaching out and moving a little better. But also often, especially as in this case with some old lamenesses, some long-term stuff, it takes 3 or 4 shoeings for the effects of that shoe absorbing the concussion and changing the roll and the motion of the foot to work its way up through the joints and tendons and ligaments, and really to get maximum benefit out of it. Flip side to that, though, it's like Gracie here. She was sore a long time before we started using these shoes. So to have a relatively long recovery period, a 3 shoeing, 4 shoeing recovery period, is not a surprise. That should be anticipated. Well, I wire brushed some of the dirt off the outside. We'll clean the dirt out. Now, I also run and pick out as much of that crease as I easily can. There's a lot of roll to this shoe, and you can see where there's not even a crease around here anymore. Part of that is where I've rasped into it, and I'll do this as a final thing on the new shoes. I'll rasp a rolled toe in because of her navicular. And part of that is just where she's got this. I'll show you with the new shoes. She just got it worn down and thin. I like to use a pair of crease nail pullers. They will reach in and grab and pop that nail out. I'll go to my regular pull-offs and show. As you grab that shoe underneath and pry, that whole shoe is flexible and it moves. So you don't pop a shoe and a nail off like you do with a regular steel shoe. So that's where the crease nail pullers come in. They just loosen up that nail and then pull it out. These nail heads are jammed fairly deeply into the shoe because I've used it so many times over and over. For trimming, for nailing, we don't need any other tools than your standard shoeing job. Whatever the farrier has currently for tools and equipment, that'll work for these shoes. Clean the dirt out, and we'll touch up around the frog here, get that cleaned up a little bit. Now again, because of her navicular, we want to maintain a fairly upright angle. I'm going to leave her heels alone. I don't trim a lot of sole out. And as you'll see here in just a moment, I actually like to leave a flat spot in the sole that the shoe will rest on. You can see it starting to come here. Now you can see here, we've got a flat spot in the sole all the way around. Very much like you trim for a barefooted horse. What this allows me to do, the shoe will rest right on that flat sole. And as the foot grows longer, that stops the shoe from buckling to the inside. A steel shoe, if we rested on this flat portion, you would have pressure points and you'd have a sore horse. You look at the steel shoes, and one of the selling points is that they are concave on the hoof surface, trying to avoid that sole pressure. With a Happy Hoofwear shoe, we need that correct pressure. All right, well, we're ready to start putting some shoe sizes on here and determining how to choose a shoe size that is appropriate. So I pulled out 3 shoes here. This black one is a double-aught. And when I make a choice for shoe size, it's just a matter of like any other shoe. Hold the foot up, put the shoe on, and see how it fits. For the sake of you folks seeing it with the camera, I'll put it flush on this inside wall, and you can see on this double-aught how I've got a little hoof wall exposed. It's also just barely coming back and covering the buttress. So it's just a little bit short and a little narrow. So I don't really like the double-aught. There's a single-aught. Now again, flush on the inside with my fingers holding it, and we've got just a little exposure around the edge, so I like the width on this single-aught, and our length is pretty good. Next size up is a number 1. Flush on the inside, and I've got a lot of shoe exposed, so that the width is way too much. Since we can't shape these and change the width like you do with a steel or an aluminum shoe, you go a little oversized and cut it off. But in this case, on this number 1, we'd actually cut into the crease. So we don't want that. And lengthwise, it's quite a bit long, and there's just a lot to trim off the back. So number 1's a little too big. My choice here for Grace, single-aught. The shoe that we took off, this orange one, I cut the clip off of here. For purposes today, just to show you the differences, I'll leave the clip on. And because it's polyurethane, you can cut it with your nippers. If I cut it, then I will also rasp this little bump off the front. Some farriers do, some don't. I do on some horses, not on others. It all comes down to personal preference. There are no nail holes. We've got a crease, but no nail holes. 2 feet, there's 2 ways of putting these shoes on. This first one, I'll just straight nail. Now, when you straight nail, that means that as the nail goes through the foot, as the nail goes through the shoe, it doesn't know if it's going through shoe or hoof. And so you have to compensate for the thickness of that shoe. And I'll show you here in detail. Let me get a couple of nails in so this shoe is solid, and then I'll show you the difference I'll make in my nailing angle. Just as with a steel shoe, I get a couple of nails started and then drive it through and twist it off. Now, if I was, we'll get the nail that I dropped there. If I was nailing a steel shoe, I would have, well, not quite that much, there we go. I would have an angle about like that through a steel shoe. Because we're nailing through the thickness of this polyurethane, I will tilt my nail a little more so it goes in deeper. It really doesn't go deeper into the foot because as it's going through that shoe, it starts to turn to come out. but you can see the two different slopes on that nail. So that's just a little adjustment that you need to make, and it will take 2 or 3 or 4 shoes to get used to it. It's not a big deal. Straighten this out where we're starting to bend. As a general rule of thumb, double aught shoes, I will use 3 nails on each side. Single aught, depending on the foot, sometimes I will go with 4 nails on each side, sometimes there's 3 on each side. And the difference is, if you've got a big, wide, rounded foot, kind of a flat foot, then I will typically just go with the 4 nails. I'll go ahead and put in my heel nails back here. I'll do it on Gracie just for visual purposes so you can see the difference. I do this more and more commonly now, putting in my heel nails, because as you saw with the pulling the shoe off or the pull-offs, we have some flexibility at the heels. So the heel nail does make this shoe a little more secure. But even with Grace, with a narrow heel, with the navicular, I'm not concerned about having that heel nail in, because as I mentioned earlier, as this foot expands and contracts, these nails, I believe, are actually pivoting within the shoe, and so it's not bracing her heels. Even with the heel nails in, these feet are still expanding, the heels are still opening up and maintaining a nice wide open heel. Same as with a steel or aluminum shoe. Once they're in, go through with your clinch block, set your nails, and you're good to go. There we go. Now, here's the extra heel exposed that we need to cut off. And I like to do that before too much time passes. Just take my nippers and cut it. Simple as that. This is not difficult. But I like to do that fairly soon after nailing the shoe on. Now I'm dressing it up with the rasp, because my concern is if it's sticking way out there and you go and do something at the truck, or the horse takes a jump, next thing they've stepped on all that shoe and jerked it off of there. So the easy solution, cut it off before that happens. While I'm here, we'll clinch. And the clinching is just the same as with any other shoe. Pretty much follow the AFA guidelines for your nailing, for your clinching, for your trimming of the foot. The only differentiation would be the guidelines don't specify leaving that flat sole for the shoe to bear weight on. But it's like with the barefooted trims. If you have more surface area, you have fewer pounds per square inch, and you have a much happier horse. So it's really quite beneficial. Now we'll do the inside. And now we'll do the same clinching procedure on the inside. Whoops. We'll trim this heel off first. Another question I get from a lot of folks is, will these shoes stay on any better than the steel shoe? And no, they don't. If you have a horse out in the mud, if you've got an unbalanced rider, if you've got a horse that's been in the stall for 2 weeks and you turn it loose and it just explodes out of the gate, they'll peel these shoes off same as anything else. But they're sure a whole lot easier to find out in the field. If you've got a hot pink shoe or a bright orange shoe, they're easy to locate. In spite of the way this nips and rasps so easily, it's just amazing how much wear you get out of them. They're about the same weight as an aluminum shoe, but they have 4 or 5 times the lasting, the wearing factor than aluminum does. And they're a whole lot cheaper than aluminum. All right, we're ready to go to foot number 2. As far as pulling the shoe and trimming the foot, it's the same procedure. I will fit this second shoe a little differently, and I will pre-drill the nail holes as versus just nailing straight through the shoe. So we'll have a few adjustments on this compared to the other shoe, but basically it's the same. Once again, crease nail pullers. It just makes removal of those nails so much simpler. We'll come back for that nail later. Since I got my pull-offs in my hand, now we'll pull this one out. There we go. Keep your mouth shut so none of that old manure jumps up into your lips. And there's the second shoe. Oops, hold on, Miss Grace. Atta girl. And same thing again, we'll clean up the frog just a little bit. I want to preserve the heel on her. And because I want to leave the flat, you can see right there where there's the flat portion of the sole, and because I want to maintain that, I'm not trimming a lot of sole out with a hoof knife. I'll just nip straight through. And once again, my preference on doing this is simply to have a broader surface area. There's more of the foot that is supporting the weight of the horse, and the horses are just a little more comfortable because of it. You got fewer pounds per square inch, a whole lot less pressure. Now we'll get the other shoe. All right, this shoe I'm going to do a little bit differently. I'm going to pre-drill these holes. Oh, and the little dog that just showed up is Ruby. She's my shoeing buddy. She rides with me all the time. She's 10 years old and been with me 10 years now. It's a good little companion. I'm using an 1/8 inch drill, 3 millimeters. And you notice the angle that I'm holding it on now. I'm drilling the toenail. I'll straighten up just a little bit for my second nail hole. Third nail hole, I straighten up just a little bit again. And there's a heel nail, much straighter. Some guys will drill these out using a drill press so every hole is vertical. I like using this handheld drill because now I can change the pitch of that nail according to the horse's foot. Each nail I can change depending on the slope of the hoof wall or the position I want to put it in. And this is just exactly like you do on a handmade shoe. So this gives you a very fast, pre-made, quick delivery shoe with some of the benefits of a handmade. And once we get the nails in, I'll rest this here on the anvil. But you can see how these nails are a different slope. And that allows you to put that nail exactly to the hoof wall, gives you a lot more control of the depth of your nail, especially on thin walls, shelly walls, really flared out feet. That's a huge benefit. Okay, this is the shoe that we pre-drilled. Now from here, we'll go in, I'll put it on the horse's foot, I'll trace around the outside of the foot with a magic marker, use my nippers to cut off the excess, and then I'll come out here, I got a grinder, a sidearm grinder, and we'll buff and polish that whole shoe. And that's a different method of fitting it that some guys prefer, as versus what you saw on the first foot where I nailed it on and then trimmed it and rasped it, all what was on the horse's foot. All right, this is a little different method of fitting the shoe. Bring her foot, oh, we got a stretch on this shoe foot too, do you? Atta girl, you need to get up earlier. Slip that clip back, hold your foot squarely underneath, and now with a magic marker, I'll just trace around the back of the foot and the sides and set her down. So there's a mark. I'll go ahead and nip this off. Got that over here in the box. And I'll nip just a little to the outside of that line, because my next step, I'll go to my truck and we'll grind this down and make it smooth. All right, time to go to the truck. There we go. And now I've left just enough that I can buff that with a rasp as I need to. It's so easy to touch up with a rasp. I don't like taking it clear to the line with the grinder and then finding out, oops, I needed it a little bit wider. So I go just outside of that line. The last little touching up is the rasp. All right, we're ready to nail this number 2 shoe on. Now, I don't believe I mentioned on the other foot as I was nailing, but I'm using a Delta nail, number 5 city head, and that's my choice. E heads work well, 6 cities work well, about any brand of nail works well. Again, just whatever you've got in the truck will work on this shoe. Occasionally, as you're nailing, just as that happened there, with this round pilot hole that we drilled, this nail will twist as it's going through the shoe. And to me, that drives me nuts. I gotta have all my nail heads lined up. So if you just take the claws of the hammer and you can rotate, I mean, you can twist that nail all around because it's not in her foot yet. And just get that lined up with your crease and then finish your nailing. Oop, hold on, Grace. The fly's bothering you a little, huh? You want that foot back for a moment? Okay, come on, Gracie, let's finish. Don't like the way that one's going. It's coming out too soon. It's into an old nail hole. We'll change the angle a little bit. That's much better. Whoops. Same thing again now. With your crimp block, just set the nail heads in. No special tool required. Okay. Now before I pick this foot up and start clinching, you can see how by fitting it out of the truck, marking it with the magic marker, and then grinding down the edges, you can see how much closer this foot fits. I was concerned with the first shoe of her moving around and stepping on all that extra shoe sticking out. This way you don't have to be concerned about that. So neither way is necessarily better than the other. It's just all personal preference. Same thing for the nailing. The clinching is identical. And then here's where I just do that final little touch up on that shoe with the rasp. Turn her to the other side. Last little touch up of the shoe. And all that leaves us with now is filling in the nail holes. All of the horses I shoe, I like to take wood putty and fill in the old nail holes. I find it makes for a much healthier foot. It prevents all the bacteria from getting down inside the hoof wall. Really knocks down the incidence of white line disease in my barns. And of course it helps to control the moisture of the foot a whole lot better. You don't either lose excessive moisture through the holes from the inside of the foot or gain excessive moisture. Now in this case, she's got a dark foot. This is just a water-based wood putty. It's Elmer's wood putty, you know, from any home store. You can purchase it. And then I put a little, for a dark foot like this, I put a little bit of black color in the tempera finger paint powders. I just mix that in with it. And it just makes it look a little nicer. And then the other thing that I consider important is putting on a hoof dressing. This particular hoof dressing is Tough Stuff. About probably 25 years ago now, I did my master's thesis using Tough Stuff, the effects that it had on horses' feet, and it's been too long ago, I don't know the exact numbers anymore, but it made a significant difference on the overall hoof quality. So once again, I consider it important, and it goes on every horse that I shoe. And that's got Miss Grace ready to go. Take a whole bunch of little lesson kids out for rides. Jim, thank you very much. I appreciate the use of your place and your horses.
Yeah, thank you. What do you think this is doing for the horse?
Well, Grace at one point in time was practically unusable as a lesson horse anymore. Her navicular was so bad. And what Kirk's done with these shoes and the way he trims the horses, we've got this horse where we use her 3-4 days a week for multiple lessons per day, and she's got a job, she's productive, she's happier, she's just all around a much better off horse.
Folks, I need to apologize to you people. My head's set here on doing the photography and getting everything lined up, and poor old Grace, with her navicular, I forgot a very important step, and that is to come in and rasp off the toes of her shoes. This is giving her a rolled toe effect, and I'm taking it pretty wide. I'll come out here to almost your second nail hole. I don't want to force her to break over in just in one exact location. Now the handy thing here is, yes, we've already got the shoe nailed and we got the wood putty in and we got the hoof dressing on, but you know, it doesn't matter. We can always come in and touch up these shoes. But this rolled toe effect really helps out a navicular horse a lot. You can see it's bringing the breakover point to here instead of out on the edge of that shoe where it was originally. It really does not affect the wear of the shoe because that is the breakover point. She's going to grind that off eventually anyway, so we've just taken it off and now she'll pivot instead of put a lot of erosion onto that shoe. This is an important part of the navicular horse. Now with both of Grace's feet standing here on the ground and on the concrete, this is the foot that I rasped off, and you can see how much further that put the breakover point as compared to here. The clip is still on the shoe. It's still doing its job to keep that shoe from sliding back, or as I had on her previous, on the orange shoes that we pulled off, you can take the clip off altogether, doesn't matter. But that is where the rocker toe, the rolled toe, is so important to put on. And now I'll come and do the same thing on this shoe to keep her even. The conclusion now, I wanted to show you the difference in this orange shoe that we took off of Grace and, you know, a brand new shoe. You can see how much roll that we're able to put into that compared to here. And you can see also, this is a worn out shoe. You can see how much thinner she got that shoe all the way back. And you noticed as I was pulling this shoe off, the difficulty I was having grabbing the nail heads where they were just embedded so far down over multiple shoeings. And those are indications it's just time for a new pair of shoes. Now, where these shoes really seem to work so well is because they really encourage expansion and contraction of the foot. With the first shoeing, these heels spread open so much that it's routine to have to put on a larger shoe the next go round, and then it maintains itself over and over and over. But you're getting an increased amount of blood flowing to the foot. You're getting a tremendous amount of shock being absorbed. And those things over time is what's making these sore-footed horses so much better. They're not, you know, a magic bullet. They're just allowing the horse to heal itself from the inside out by improving blood flow and improving overall hoof conditions. There has been no scientific studies done on these shoes, but I have to draw comparisons to all the money that's been spent on studies of people standing on concrete and assembly lines all day long and standing on rubber mats. And I think almost all of us are aware of the conditions it makes on your ankles, your knees, your hips, your back. We're just much more comfortable standing on rubber mats. And for a horse to stand on a steel shoe or an aluminum shoe versus this polyurethane shoe has got to be very, very similar. I've seen these results horse after horse after horse, and my customers are asking me to use more and more of these shoes. They come currently single lot, double lot, and number one. I've got unhappy customers because they're not in triple lot and they're not in number two, and they want their horses. You know, we need more of these shoe sizes. They're for front feet, they're shaped for a front foot. I've got a lot of customers telling me, Kirk, I've got hock problems, I've got stifle problems, can you please put these on my hind feet? If it's a real narrow pointed hind foot, it just doesn't work. But I've got them on a lot of horses behind, and we're finding the same things on the hind end. It's really improving their motion. They're taking a longer stride behind, they're using their hocks better, and they're becoming more and more sound after 1 or 2 shoeings. So they're just a phenomenal shoe. If you folks have any questions, contact Happy Hoofwear. The information will be here on the video, with the phone number and website address. Good people that will help you out. They're based out of Sarasota, Florida. These are an American-made product, 100%, and that goes well with me also. So thank you very much for your time. I hope this was helpful to you. All right, Ms. Ruby, coming in.